All right, hey guys. Today we are going to be talking about my Rain of Arrows pen shot nuke build for rogues. Played around with a lot of things, but let's look into it. Let's take a dive. So first things first, I choose the preparation specialization. What this is going to do is allow us to use our ultimate a ton. I mean, 50 seconds is pretty low, but if we can keep bursting skills, which we can and we'll go over, then we will be successful. So I chose Forceful Arrow as my base attack. The reason being, you can get that increased crit chance, which helps the build overall, as well as apply vulnerable, which applies to a lot of different glyphs, a lot of different skills we have. There's the money shot, the penetrating shot. It's pretty good. It's great that it uses 35 energy, because we will be bursting this a lot, and that's going to bring our ultimate cooldown even further. So I chose the advanced penetrating shot for the crowd control and slow, which is where my build was initially, but both of these are great options for the build, so use whatever you want. I maxed out sturdy as well as siphoning strikes, because I do end up being close to a lot of enemies and a lot do rush you, so this is just great survivability, which I've been building a little bit more into this build. It started as a glass cannon because I'm playing with my friends, and then, tested out a few builds. But yeah, siphoning strikes is really important. As far as agility skills, the most important thing is the weapon mastery. I was using dash for mobility, but the truth is you can swap this out for shadow step, smoke grenades, concealment, whatever you want. Rapid gambits, I do like having the evade cooldown. And this is great because when you daze an enemy and you have concussive, you knock them down and you get that 12% additional crit strike chance. So those work great together. Subterfuge, again, you can use any of these alternating smoke grenade, concealment, which is really great. You can go invisible, and that first penetrating shot will make everybody vulnerable, which is great. Exploit I use for the healthy damage. Since this is a nuke, we want to get as much of that damage up front as possible. And malice, everybody's vulnerable, so just 9% increased damage. Can't go wrong there. As far as imbuement, my focus has been Shadow Imbuement. It's just by far just the best to me, but they're all great options. At this time, I was using it for additional energy. We can use this to continue bursting that penetrating shot, as it takes 35. You really want to keep getting that back. That primary explosion causes all enemies to be vulnerable, which is much better. As much as that additional damage is great, we want to make sure everybody is vulnerable. Cold Imbuement, I actually recently added on as well for this. I was mixing the two so I can ensure that I got that chill damage, and I believe that applies with the gear I was working with for this. So I chose more crowd control since all the damage is coming from Shadow Imbuement. And yeah, of course you want additional critical strike chance as well. For the ultimate, I did a lot of innervation since I do have a lot of lucky hit chance. I mean, more than normal, and penetrating shot has that base of 58, and Shadow Imbuement has like an additional 40, so you're starting from 98% on that, so you're likely to get that energy regenerated so you can use your Rain of Arrows all day. You don't have any options here, but Rain of Arrows, fantastic. As far as the key passive, I've chosen Precision, but Close Quarters Combat does work if you are using a Cutthroat skill. So does Victimize. I haven't actually tried that, but it does look pretty amazing with the amount of explosions that have been building into this particular build and the Pen Shot Nuke. it is definitely a viable option I'll play around with. So now the Paragon, the curse to all players. This is the base. Up until recently, I didn't have much survivability, so I came back. But the key is fill out as many of these magic nodes as possible. And if you have this glyph, it's going to make the rest of your build great. You're looking at that core skill damage, and the critical strikes restore an additional 12% of the energy cost. So of that 35, you're probably getting 4 energy back per crit. And that penetrating shot, it's going to go through everyone. If you crit on multiple people, 4, 8, 12, just start stacking. And that's going to allow you to burst your penetrating shot even more. So definitely something you want. The first additional board I added, no witnesses. Since I was in love with the ultimate, I wanted that extra damage. The execute, since I'm focused on this healthy enemy damage, that really stacks up with what I was looking at, So I wanted to make sure I was able to execute them once they were injured. But the rest here is focused on damage, making my way to that glyph socket as I'm reaching 100. Next board is Eldritch board for Eldritch Bounty. This really enhances your imbued skills. So I turned it this way so I could get that imbued skill damage and that ultimate really quickly, but then I really wanted that non-physical damage and imbuement skill cooldown. So I really bit that bullet, cut right through, but it paid off. Right now I have the potion node leveled up just for this glyph. Ideally, I will get this to 15, and that will allow more imbued skill damage, which obviously we want. And that half-second skill cooldown when using another imbuement is incredible when you're using 2 or even 3, which I've found out, imbuments. So then the next board is Tricks of the Trade. I flipped it this way so I could get that critical strike damage immediately, and I noticed I wasn't doing too much to bosses. So I wanted, again, more damage output, which didn't help my survivability, but been playing with my friends, so I moved to the middle to get this armor. I don't have the strength right now, but that always changes. But these magic nodes over here doing damage to elites is great, and even more so, this glyph in this board in this position is just fantastic. If you can get that bonus to all magic nodes, I mean, that's a lot. 20, 40, 60 damage to elites from the magic, and then 32. So we're looking at 92% additional damage to bosses and elites just from that alone. So I know that was pretty quick, but there should be timestamps. You can sort back and forth. Just remember, you can always make changes. This is just how I did it according to my playstyle. So let's look at the gear. I've been running Penitent Greaves, which at the beginning was key to this build, and it is still nice to get that 10% more damage to chilled enemies. So I added Cold Imbuement to see if I could just apply that damage more and more to everything, but Vulnerable and Shadow Nuke is definitely my bread and butter. Recently got this Word of Hakan. It's been on my wish list. Love it, especially since I'm popping my ults. I use this helmet because the ranks of Shadow Imbuement and the cooldown reduction just for all of my skills is great. So that's one of the main things I focus on is cooldown reduction. I used the evade aspect so I could go invisible if I needed to survive and revive some friends. Becoming injured makes you unstoppable. It's absolutely necessary. So with this aspect, and again why I have such high lucky hit, when they are chilled, those explosions just kind of keep going back and forth. If you get a big enough group, that is incredible. You'll just see it just constantly doing it until everybody's frozen, and then with the boots you do an additional 10% damage. The legs, of course, again, this is mostly for the imbuement skill cooldown reduction, but I like the taking damage from surrounded enemies drops a smoke grenade, and then you dodge the next 6 attacks. This allows you to almost set up the point where you want to use your ultimate. You get hit, it applies the daze and crowd control, and then you just have enough time with those dodged hits to fire it off. With this build as well, and the imbuments, the penetrating shot splits off to either side. This is absolutely just incredible. It's amazing. You can just one-shot entire groups of, 20 plus levels higher than you as far as the mobs, but when you get to those single targets, doesn't really help too much as far as the split. I did killing a vulnerable enemy grants you increased energy regeneration. Again, this is so we can just keep bursting out that penetrating shot and get that ultimate back as soon as possible. Using that with all 3 imbuments, it's just going to apply so much damage and so quickly, and you can just do it group after group. The marksman skills, your ultimate also counts for that, and penetrating shot, I guess. Looking again at that lucky hit chance, the base is really high, so you have a great chance to at least get that 10%, and you hit so many enemies. Your rain of arrows is going through, those all count as well. So proccing these is extremely nice because it will proc the chilled explosions if you have chilled the enemy, and it just does wonders. It'll give you that siphoning strike health. Lots of fun stuff. And then evade on the other weapon, just dropping grenades so I could get the crowd control. So let's take a look at my skills. I have moved away a little bit from crowd control and a little bit more towards the imbuement focus. So those cooldown reductions and imbuement cooldown reduction are extremely important. They allow you to constantly just burst and be doing high amounts of damage and helping out your team if you're playing with others. So we'll look through the stats. Range is pretty good. I'm happy with it. Probably better out there. I definitely want to increase that critical strike chance, but there are a lot of passives on the rogue that boost that up about 10%. So, we can easily say we're looking at another 30%, and 208% crit strike damage is nice. Focus on vulnerable, since you make everything vulnerable. Oh yeah, 258% crit damage. So it's key. Vulnerable is important. That 92 versus elites, that's great. My crowd control, like I said, that's dropped, but it's easy to scale up. But that's just any crowd control. There's stun, which again I get from my smoke grenade and the evade sword there, which I didn't even look at. I believe the damage with these elements comes from the Paragon. Damage with imbued as well as picking that up anywhere you can on your gear. The damage with imbued and then damage with imbuement are a little bit different as well. But not really worth getting into the nitty-gritty of. My resistance is mediocre at best, and this is what I was saying about my survivability. I only have 28% damage reduction from close, and we already looked at the utility. So that wraps it up. If you need to go back and watch it, feel free to go back and pause. You can see a little bit more detail. So this is a boss on average. I farmed tier 40 to 45. And this is just kind of how the average boss goes. Follow me on, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, whatever. I'm always running higher tier dungeons as well. If you want to see how it does in there and see how these builds evolve. The new season coming out on July 20th. I have a lot of input for as far as those new jewels that'll be coming out, and trust me, I'll be messing around with a lot of those builds. But yeah, if there are any questions, leave a comment below, subscribe to YouTube. I'll see you around.